Hello once again, my brothers and sisters. Thank you one more time for attending another Living Hope Today study. Today, we find ourselves in Deuteronomy chapter 20. This is a pretty fascinating chapter. You know, God has brought his people right to the edge of the promised land. Moses, throughout the whole book of Deuteronomy, has been instructing God's people about what they're to do once they cross over. And now we get down to the nuts and bolts of it in the sense that we're going to talk about how to conquer the people that currently inhabit the promised land. It's a fascinating study. Let's look at it together. Verse 1 of chapter 20 says, "When you go to war against your enemies, and you see horses and chariots and an army greater than yours, do not," listen, "do not be afraid of them, because the Lord your God, who brought you up out of Egypt, will be with you." Okay, so what do we know from this? Well, we know that they're going to have to fight. What else do we know? Their enemies are going to look bigger. They're going to have better equipment. They're going to have horses and chariots, and they're going to have a huge army. But the Israelites are commanded, don't be afraid of any of that. Don't let the circumstances impact your attitude. Instead, what? When you are about to go into battle, the priest is going to come forward. He's going to address the army. And you have to remember, I'm the one who brought you out of Egypt. I'm going to be with you. You are accomplishing my plan, so you can expect my power to be exerted on your behalf. All right, so isn't it interesting that God doesn't have the general, or whatever that commander's name might be in the ancient world? He doesn't have the general coming out to address the troops. He has the priest coming out to address the troops. Why? Because this isn't just a military conquest. This is a movement of God, a commandment of God. They are responding in obedience to what God has told them to do. Very critical to remember that. So what does the priest do? When he comes out, he says to the troops, "Hear, O Israel, today you are going into battle against your enemies." And what does the priest reiterate? Do not be faint-hearted or afraid. All right, do not be terrified or give way to panic before them. Just imagine this. You're going into a situation where the odds of victory look absolutely impossible, but ignore that. That's basically what's being said. Don't let the circumstances impact your attitude at all. Don't be terrified. Don't be faint-hearted. Don't be afraid. I am going to oversee the battle. For the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to give you victory. In other words, you're being used by God as an agent, but the force behind you is God's force. It's not just the fact that you have a sword in your hand. It's that God is fighting against these people that you are about to dispossess of the land, and God has the power to take them out. You don't have to worry. Now, did everybody agree and feel comfortable with that instruction? Well, look what the officers say. The officers shall say to the army, "Hey, has anyone built a new house and not dedicated it?" Okay, so you've had a construction project and it's not finished yet. Well, what should you do? Go home. We don't need you. We got God. God's going to fight for us. If you're preoccupied with what's happening at home, go home. Or if you don't, you may die in battle and someone else may dedicate it. In other words, you might lose that honor and that place if you stay and fight. Has anyone planted a vineyard and not begun to enjoy it? Okay, so your crop hasn't come up yet. What should you do? Well, go home. Go home. Or he may die in battle and someone else may enjoy it. In other words, you don't need to risk your life if that's going to impede you. Go home. And it keeps coming. Look at this. Has anyone become pledged to a woman and not married her? Okay, so you're engaged. What should you do? Go home. let him go home, or he may die in battle and someone else will marry her. You might miss the love of your life if you continue on forward into the battle. Wow. Really, God, don't you need every last guy? Don't you need as much force as you can? What's the point of this? The point is simple. God is the force. He can do it with a few guys. He can do it with a lot of guys. Doesn't matter. God's power will overwhelm God's enemies. Then the officer shall add, is any man afraid or faint-hearted? Hey, you don't like war? You're a conscientious objector? You don't want to go? Okay, go home. Go home. So that his brothers will not be disheartened too. In other words, here comes a reason for getting rid of those conscientious objectors when we go into battle. Because once they start crying about how scared they are, maybe everybody else will be scared too. So God says, hey, if that's really your attitude, you need to go home. No problem. See you later. What kind of army is this? This must be guys that are absolutely convinced God has called them to the fight and they're fearless. Let's go. It's got to be the attitude. When the officers have finished speaking to the army, they shall appoint commanders over it. So once we get to verse 9, let's see who's left out of all the guys that went home. And whoever's left, these guys are going to be the commanders. We'll appoint some of them to lead. And when you march up to attack a city, make its people an offer of peace. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? So here comes the Israelite army. They come to your town. And before they attack you, they send messengers into the village and they say, hey, we're not really interested in wiping you out. We want peace. All right? Now, it's not peace without price, at least for those who are living in the land. If they accept and if they open their gates, all the people in it shall be what? Subject to forced labor. They shall work for you. Okay, here comes God to the gate with his army. If you guys surrender, then we'll let you live. Okay, you're going to live. You're going to be forced to work for us, but you're going to be alive while you do it. All right? That's a choice. God gives the enemy. If they refuse to make peace and they engage you in battle, what should you do then? Lay siege to that city. In other words, if it starts, we're going to finish it. We're going to go all the way. Anybody who refuses the offer of peace is going to be attacked. When the Lord your God delivers it into your hand, I want you to just stop there in verse 13 and see how that's phrased. Again, who's fighting? Yeah, there's guys with swords and whatever weaponry they had, but it's the Lord that's going to deliver it into their hands. But once that happens, what should you do? Well, kill all the men. Wow. Kill all the men. God says, I am going to wipe out all the men. And then he said, as for the women and the children and the livestock and everything else in the city, you can take that as plunder for yourselves. Okay, so you can use that plunder. Okay? That belongs to you now. The Lord your God gives you from your enemies. All right, so that's something God takes away from the people that are living there and gives to the Israelite army. That's his command. Wow, this is how you are to treat all the cities that are at a distance from you and do not belong to the nations nearby. However, in the cities of the nations the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, do not leave alive anything that breathes. Okay, so wait a minute. So if the village is really out of the scope of the promised land that we're meant to have, well, then we can make that offer of peace. And if that offer is accepted, we can enslave those people and take their stuff. Okay, but if the city is in the middle of where we are going to live, the promised land, God says, wipe them all out. Wipe out everything that breathes. God, is this why they say the God of the Old Testament is so harsh? Why is he doing this? Well, we're going to get to it just a minute. Completely destroy them. That's pretty clear. I mean, I don't think you have to go to seminary to figure out what that's saying, right? The Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, as the Lord your God has commanded you. I want you to see you're not acting on your own. You're acting in response to what God told you to do. All right? Kill them all. Why, God? Why? It's right here. Otherwise, they will teach you to follow all the detestable things they do in worshiping their gods, and you will sin against the Lord your God. What's God saying here? He's saying to the Israelite army, I'm using you guys as my sword of judgment. These people know I exist. Romans 1 would tell us that all creation announces God's existence. They have a conscience. They know right from wrong, and they consistently violate that. They consistently live in their paganism, worshiping rocks and pieces of wood and the stars and the animals, and they refuse to turn to God, and God says, don't let any of that be among you, or you will fall into the same trap. So what do? You wipe them out. That's God. Now, you say, well, that's really harsh. Well, yeah, I guess it is. But I want you to look at the whole picture of salvation. What's God going to do to anybody that refuses his offer of salvation? What's God going to do? Do you remember? It's called judgment. It's called hell. It's called there is a place where God says, I will never tolerate evil. I will not allow it to exist. And once that place comes, once it's time for God to issue his command and let his wrath fall, what does that mean? Well, it might seem harsh to you, but it's not that God's being mean, it's that God's being holy. God is holding on to the fact that he wants his people to live separated, morally sound as they walk with him. If they fall into these places where they have mercy on these villages that are sacrificing their children, worshiping other gods, it's not like the culture we live in tells us that everybody should just believe whatever they want. We should all fear God. You can believe whatever you want, but you have to understand once you go outside of what God has said, you put yourself right in the bullseye of his wrath. He's willing to save all of us if we'll come to him on his terms, but the human heart doesn't want to yield to that. We want to say instead, we know more than God, and we're going to live how we want to live. Well, here in Deuteronomy 20, we see in a microcosm fashion the judgment that will come. Here we have villages being wiped out. If you read the book of Revelation, you can see that 1/3 of the earth's population gets wiped out in plagues, in famines, in natural disasters. You can see that once the wrath of God hits, it is terrible and unstoppable. It's why Romans, 5:9 says that we are now justified by his blood. We are saved from his wrath. We are saved from his wrath. How can that be? Jesus took the punishment we deserve. God put his righteousness on us, those who believe. Well, we'll finish the chapter. When you lay siege to a city for a long time, fighting against it to capture it, look at this. Do not destroy its trees by putting an axe to them, because you can eat their fruit. So if it's a fruit tree, hey, don't cut it down. That's going to be a source of food for you. Don't cut them down. Are the trees of the field people? I mean, you're wiping out the village, but you don't have to wipe out the productive trees. That you should besiege them? You're not fighting against trees, you're fighting against people. And as the chapter ends, it just says, however, you may cut down trees that you know are not fruit trees, and use them to build siege works until the city at war with you falls. waging war in the Old Testament. It's a picture of where evil is headed. Evil is headed to the judgment of God. And once God says that's enough, as demonstrated in Deuteronomy 20, there will be no escape. Oh, that's why we need to serve Him well today, church. God bless you.
Who is it who for sinners shed His blood, and now for cleansing all can plunge beneath that flood? It's Jesus. But do you know who He is? He's the image of the invisible God, and He's the brightness of His glory, the first, the last, the future, the past. He is God.